Namo Narayana, welcome back. Today we're going to be reading some more of Adi Shankara. So a lot of what I've read by him has been encapsulated in a single video, very direct to the point. But there's a few things I've read which are a little lengthier, and they're rather interesting because sometimes I think they really get deep and heady and maybe even a little confusing, but they also take ideas and flesh them out, and he really likes to flesh things out. So I find them an interesting balance from the shorter ones. Though, obviously, they can be difficult to understand, and I'm not even in a position necessarily to explain them as well as they should be, and I apologize for that. But I believe just by hearing the words or reading the words, you're affected by them, and that's kind of better than nothing. So obviously I'm going to be reading a long piece today. This is the Sata Sloki, and it's 100 verses, and so obviously I'm going to be dividing this up. And the verses are also really thick. I'm not sure if this is Adi Shankar just writing like crazy, or if it's the translator who's adding things to what Adi Shankar's written to clarify. There is nothing in all the three worlds that can be compared to the Sadguru who imparts the knowledge of the self. The legendary Philosopher's Stone may perhaps be suggested as an apt comparison because it has the capacity to convert a piece of iron into gold, just as the Sadguru converts an ordinary disciple into an enlightened person. But this comparison cannot stand because while the Sadguru makes the disciple another guru like himself, the Philosopher's Stone does not have the power to convert a piece of iron into another Philosopher's Stone like itself. Therefore the Sadguru is incomparable and even transcends the world in glory. By the fragrance emanating from the sandalwood tree, all the other trees around it also become endowed with fragrance, and those trees also completely remove the torment caused by heat of all human beings who take shelter under them. So also the disciples who have by their good fortune attained self-knowledge from the Sadguru, and who are full of compassion, eradicate completely by their advice and teachings, the three kinds of suffering and the three kinds of sin of those who approach them. Brahma is spoken of in two ways in the Vedas. In the first part of the Vedas, known as the Karmakanda, which describes the rituals to be performed by persons seeking various ends such as wealth, progeny, and heaven, Brahman is considered as associated with the limiting adjunct in the form of the subtle body. This is the transmigrating soul, known as Jivatma. In the second part of the Vedas, known as Janakanda, which consists of the Upanishads, the pure Brahman, devoid of all limiting adjuncts, is spoken of. From the Upanishads, a seeker who has acquired the necessary fitness first attains the realization that he is not the body-mind complex, but the pure Brahman. Thereafter he realizes that the whole universe is in reality nothing but Brahman. The self, which is of the nature of sentiency, consciousness, and bliss, is well known as the experience in all the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. It is what makes the body, mind, and organs function. In spite of knowing this clearly, it is a wonder that man, because of delusion caused by ignorance of his real nature, looks upon his own body as well as that of others, which is composed externally of bones, muscles, bone marrow, flesh, blood, membrane, skin, and lymph, and which is filled inside with excretia, urine, and phlegm, as the self, and identifies his perishable body with himself. In this world, people look upon their own bodies, their wives, sons, friends, servants, and their possessions, such as horses and oxen, as the sole source of all their happiness. They spend all their allotted lifespan only in thinking of the means of protecting and nourishing all these. They never think of that self, the immortal Lord of all life, because of whom they are alive and are able to function as sentient beings, and to whom they owe all their good fortune. A certain silkworm, thinking itself to be very wise, builds a case around itself for protection with the thread that comes out of its mouth, and remains in it throughout its life, ever active in trying to accomplish what it wants, little realizing that the case itself will ultimately be the cause of its destruction when it is taken away along with the worm by someone who wants to make silk out of it. In the same way, man, having acquired a gross physical body as a result of the karma accumulated by him by his actions in the past lives, remains attached to that body, identify himself with it, and engages in further actions which will only result in perpetuating his bondage. A man who, for earning his livelihood, entertains people by painting his body to make himself look like a tiger, and frightens gullible children by his appearance, does not really think that he is a tiger, and does not eat or attack men and animals. A man who dresses as a woman to play a female role in a dramatic performance does not begin to think of himself as a woman, and does not look for a husband. Both of them are always aware of what they really are, although they may outwardly put on the garb of a tiger or a woman. So also everyone must realize that the physical body is only a garb in which the individual soul is cloaked. The individual soul is known by experience to be different from the body and is a mere witness to all the activities of the body. Being a mere witness, the soul does not participate in the actions performed by the body and is not in the least affected by the results of such actions. In order to comfort her child who has been crying because of some pain in the body, the mother puts into its mouth a raisin, a date, a piece of ripe mango, or a piece of ripe banana. The idea is to comfort the child temporarily so that it may willingly take the medicine to be administered to remove the cause of the pain. The intention of the mother is not to feed the child with a raisin, etc., which will not cure the child of its affliction, but may only aggravate it. In the same way, the Upanishads adopt various means to impart knowledge of the self to the ignorant man whose mind is full of the vasanas, or those impressions left by actions performed in innumerable past lives under wrong identification with the body-mind complex. One's own body, wife, son, possessions, and the like become dear only because of love of one's own self. It follows, therefore, that the self is what is loved more than anything else. Every other thing than the self, such as the wife and the sons, etc., is the cause of sorrow. Therefore, how can these be really objects of desire? A person who wants to save his own life when it is in danger, or who wants things to go his own way in life, may even be prepared to give up his wife, sons, etc., when they act in a way not to his liking. One who wants the highest attainment for himself, namely liberation, should abandon even his attachment to the body. The wise man should meditate on the self alone and not be attached to anything else. An object is liked only as long as it gives happiness. When the same object produces sorrow, it is disliked. The same object cannot give happiness all the time, nor can it always be a cause of sorrow. What is liked earlier may become the object of dislike later, and vice versa, since any object is liked only for the sake of itself. The self alone is always dear. I'm going to pause here, which is actually earlier than I expected to, but he's just said such amazing things here, which really need to be digested, and if I blast through another 10 verses, we're going to lose such great things. I'm particularly interested in the last 2 verses that I read. First line of verse 9. One's own body, wife, son, possessions, and the like become dear only because of love of one's own self. Wow, that is intense, and it's also really true on some level. We have stuff, they reflect us, they're important to us. Are those things important because they're not connected to us? I mean, a family heirloom, for example. It has value to me, and I don't have any children. So when I pass away, family heirlooms, they're just what's going to happen to them. And I've thought about this, and it dawned on me that if I had children, well, they never met my grandmother. I knew her for half my life before she passed away. I have many memories of sitting in her apartment for holidays with her. And I have some paintings that she did. if I had a child, let's say tomorrow, well, that name, Viola, my grandmother, is meaningless to that child. Actually, that's their great-grandmother, who they never had met, and is almost as meaningless as when I say Solomon, who was my relative, I think it's like the year 18-something. I just know I have a couple relatives named Solomon here in Maine somewhere in the 1800s. I know nothing about them other than that, and that they had a bunch of kids. It's meaningless. So if I have this heirloom from Solomon, yes, it's kind of cool because it's old, but Solomon means nothing to me. So this really doesn't have any personal value other than just it's old. So if I gave something, this painting that my grandmother Viola did to my future child, they're going to look at the painting and go, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, and that's probably it. Same way as I look at this from Solomon. They're not going to go, oh, my great-grandmother did this. That means so much to me, because it doesn't. She painted the painting that I'm thinking of right now, I think it's a little lighthouse on a breakwater, for me, actually, for Christmas. It has meaning to me. So, when I pass away, and my girlfriend, future wife, passes away, if I gave my things to my children, would they care? I love Doctor Who. I'm 45 years old, and I've been watching it since I was 11 years old. I'm a huge fan. He was my childhood idol. When I couldn't watch on a TV, I read the books. And I have hundreds of books. And hundreds of books. I have most of the novels that have been written for Doctor Who, and I have hunted them down over numerous states. And I've read most of them. They may have value for a Doctor Who collector, and maybe someday I'll pass them on. Most of them are used, not really valuable, they just mean something to me. But to give my future son or daughter who has never seen Doctor Who 500 novels, will they really care? Will they really care? I have a coworker, and he is actually retirement age. I don't know when he'll retire, and he has 4 kids. And he's like, when I die, I don't care about anything else, but they're going to get my vinyl collection. Well, first of all, they've probably already heard Led Zeppelin, because I know he likes that classic rock stuff, and some jazz. If they don't like jazz now, they're not going to really care if they get a Charlie Parker album. They're going to find out very quickly that used albums that are worn are not worth anything. I used to work in a record store, but my coworker is like, oh, I give the vinyl to them because it means so much to me. Even though I haven't listened to it in 30 years, it means so much to me. But will it mean things to them? If I have something historical from my relative Solomon, which I don't, it's just a good example, then I will give it to a museum. I already know a couple museums that here in Maine may be interested, and one in Washington that will definitely be interested, and there's also an archives in Washington, and I will give it to them because they will have an interest in the historical value. And it's not a money thing, it's just let them put it in a box and maybe somebody will care. But it won't get thrown in the garbage. That's the first time I've actually spoken about this, but I've thought about it a lot, and as I was sitting here, I think I just reassured myself, yeah, that's the way of doing it. Give it to people who care, and they're not relatives, and they care about something else. Because really, these objects mean things to us because of who we are, and if we have no attachment to them, they don't mean anything, just like he said. Now, he does say, like, your wife and your son, doesn't say daughter, but this is the culture of the time, become dear because they're love of one's own self. I guess that's sort of true. I mean, I don't love other people's wives. And I don't love other people's kids the same way that I would love my own kid or my own future wife. The second paragraph to move on was really interesting. An object is only liked as long as it gives happiness. Oh my gosh, that's so true. It really is. I was listening to some music recently. I forget who it was. Someone who I had liked when I bought the CD 20 years ago? More than that? And I was listening to the CD going, wow, this isn't really that good. Like, yeah, one song I like, but God, why did I keep the album? Why this is not good. And why didn't I at some point just burn that song onto my computer and dump the album? Like, this is really not good. What did I see in this? And I think back, like at the time, I thought it was really good. I don't remember what album, and it doesn't matter. I've had this happen with many things. And now as I'm older, I'm like, yeah, no. That object no longer gave me happiness. So that CD, I actually got rid of. It didn't retain happiness forever. And there was no memories involved in it. There's no special songs that, oh, I danced with so and so when I heard this song, or, whatever, this album was, whatever. And I've forgotten if the album was bought with Christmas money. That object is really not the cause of the happiness. It is just sort of reflective of myself. I'm recording this 2,000 plus years after Adi Shankara wrote this. The world hasn't changed that much. Objects are just objects. Yeah, that just kind of went into this strange ramble. And but if anything else, you can say that I'm honest on this channel, and I'm giving you my honest view and my personal experience, which I think has great value in a world where folks like to quote scripture, or they quote something. I always see something in ISKCON where people say, and I've literally had it said to me in conversation, well, that is as sweet as honey. And I'm like, yeah, I like honey, but honestly, when I think of sweets, I think of like candy. I don't think of honey. Nobody thinks of things in terms of, this is as sweet as honey. This feeling of God is like honey to me. Nobody thinks like that. Now, Swami Prabhupada wrote that over and over again. This is as sweet as honey, because I think he got it from the older scriptures, where honey was valuable, where they didn't have candy, where they didn't have peeps. They didn't have these things. So honey was sweet, and nectar was sweet, and sugar was sweet. And that's all they had. But when you use these words today, and someone literally says these things to me, and I know they're just repeating what they've read. They're not putting their own thoughts into it. Because I know they're not going around thinking those thoughts. It drives me crazy, because I cannot connect with you when you're giving me verbatim stuff you've read. Put yourself into it. Use your own words. Use your own argument. So if you can fault me for anything on this channel, you can't fault me for using my own words. This is like a small print video. My apologies. It's time to cut it here. And if you're still with me, thanks for hanging out with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.